Hi everybody, thank you for joining today and what will hopefully be an extremely useful session for you and also for your client and stakeholders. Localization can often be treated, I think, as a bit of an add-on, but for learning agencies, learning partners, it can be so much more than that. It can increase deal value, it can protect your margins, it can strengthen client relationships and retention, and it can also differentiate you in client pitches as well. One challenge that we are hearing from sales teams at the moment within learning agencies and learning partners is that AI has really changed the conversation around translation. It's that clients are asking different questions, budgets are being scrutinized differently, expectations around speed have really shifted. So today's session is about how to navigate that shift with confidence and turn it into an advantage for your team. Just to give you a little bit of context as to where I'm coming from, I'm Emily and I'm General Manager and Head of Client Partnerships here at Comtech. I've worked in localization for nearly 9 years now, and I head up our L&D localization team at Comtech. We work with a number of different learning agencies, e-learning agencies, including Sponge, MindTools and Omniplex, as well as in-house learning and development teams at international brands such as Ralph Lauren and Philip Morris International. Outside of work, I am a director on the board of the Learning Network, which is a UK-based community interest company for people working in L&D. What this means in practice is that at work I am spending a lot of time sitting in on discovery calls, I'm helping agencies scope out multilingual rollouts, I'm supporting pitches, I'm advising on how to structure localization in a way that works commercially. Outside of work, when I'm working at the Learning Network, I'm hearing directly from L&D leaders on what matters most to them, what the challenges are, and kind of what's coming up for them in their day-to-day role. So what I'm going to be sharing today is coming from real conversations, real objections, and real commercial pressures as well. So here is what we are going to cover in today's session. First of all, we are going to position localization as a growth opportunity rather than an operational add-on. We're then going to look at how AI has really changed the localization conversation and what this means for you in client discussions. We're then going to talk about why this matters now specifically, and especially for agencies operating in quite competitive and margin sensitive environments. I'm going to explain what AI and localization looks like in practice, mostly because I think that there's a lot of noise around this subject, and that can often add to preconceptions or misunderstandings. So we're going to try and clear some of those up for you. We'll also look at how to help clients choose the right level of localization, the right service level based on things like risk and their objectives, rather than often defaulting to the fastest or the cheapest option. And finally, we're going to look at how to navigate common client questions when it comes to translation so that you can feel really confident about positioning different localization options to your clients and to your prospects. So let's start with a little bit of a mindset shift. For me, localization is not just a delivery requirement when a client says, oh, we also need this in 5, 10, 15 different languages. For agencies, it can do a number of different things. It can increase your deal scope. So if you're already designing and building a program, multilingual rollout becomes a natural extension of that work with very little additional work on your side because you can shift this project management over to your translation partner. It can also help you create repeatable, predictable work. Once a client rolls something out globally, whether that is a compliance course or new product updates or whatever the case may be, new modules, new updates, compliance refreshers, they're all going to follow generally the same model. Translation can also help you strengthen partnerships. So if you are managing that global consistency element, you become very much embedded within a client's ecosystem and also remove the need for your client to be managing different suppliers. Most importantly, it can help differentiate you in competitive pitches. many agencies will still treat localization as an afterthought, where clients can often see it as a bit of a deal breaker. So if you're being proactive about your approach to localization, rather than treating it as an add-on, you can set yourself apart, I think, from the competition. For clients, on the other hand, the benefits are obviously equally strong. It can ensure learner experience is consistent across different markets, it reduces friction during rollout, and it also helps them to hit their objectives faster and also more successfully on a global scale. So done well, localization can really help protect brand, it can help protect learner outcomes, and also it can help increase speed to market. That's very much a strategic conversation rather than a tactical one, and one that I think a lot of agencies really want to or should want to be part of. Let's take a little step back now and just recap what we mean actually when we're talking about AI in localization. When clients say, can we just use AI for this? They're almost always referring to machine translation. So machine translation has actually improved dramatically in quality over the last 5-10 years ago. The output is far more natural and fluent than it was back in the days of Google Translate, for example. Within the localization industry, machine translation is actually now a standard component of many different workflows. What it does do well is it helps teams to localize more content more efficiently. Where it still needs that oversight and where it should be used with caution is anywhere where there is nuance or a more emotional impact that needs to be taken into consideration. Also, different languages and different content types will see a variance in translation quality. So I think the key message really is this: the AI is part of the workflow, but it is not the entire workflow. It doesn't replace human expertise, and it's a tool to be used alongside it, like in the same way that it is in a number of different other professional services as well. So the right approach when it comes to AI and localization, or just localization as a whole, is it really does depend on things like volume, risk, language, and quality expectations. So why does this matter for learning agencies specifically? I think AI has really changed the conversation. It's changed expectations across all professional services, localization included. I think often clients will now assume that automation is involved. They will expect a faster turnaround time. They will assume that costs are going to reduce. They're also a lot more commercially focused now when it comes to localization. But there's also things that I think haven't changed. I think they still care about global consistency, they still care about brand, and they also still need those learning outcomes to land properly. So in your client conversations, I think the opportunity really is there to shift from AI versus human to actually which approach fits this content the best. When we at Comtech are sitting in on discovery calls, we can often help reframe the conversation from sort of AI versus human, as I mentioned just now, to actually consider factors like audience, risk, business objective, visibility of content, shelf life, and things like that. Clients don't always necessarily want the cheapest option, even if they think they do. What they actually will benefit from is that reassurance that they're making the right decision. And that's where I think agencies and obviously translation partners can add real value there. So we're going to look now briefly at the different approaches available when we at Comtech will support our learning agency clients. You can see here on the screen that they break down roughly into 4 different solutions, although they actually tend to exist more on a bit of a spectrum, increasing in human linguist input as we go along. So at the one end there, you have got non-customized machine translation. This has automated quality checks in place, but there's no brand customization in there. So that's really the best fit for where things like budget or speed are top priority. If we move along there, we've got customized machine translation. This is configured by linguists and localization engineers, and it's got some element of terminology and tone embedded in there so that we can tailor it slightly in terms of output. We then have machine translation with human review. This can be done within tools, for example, like Articulate Localization, or it can be done within a translation partner's CAT tool as well. And this ensures an additional level of fluency and accuracy. Finally, then you have got fully human translation, and these days that does tend to be reserved for quite complex languages like Arabic and Hebrew, for example, or content that's quite complex, whether that's in terms of subject area, sensitivity, or creativity as well. So, content that might be written quite deliberately with a set style in mind to reflect a brand voice, for example. So when we support agencies, we'll often map content types against these different service levels. For example, one company might want compliance refresher modules sitting at one level, they might have leadership programs sitting at another, they might have kind of more external facing or onboarding learning sitting somewhere else. And that content categorization will look very different for each company depending on what their priorities and their objectives are. That structured thinking, I think, really helps to make sure that you're making maximum use out of your budget and you're being very strategic about your localization approach. I'm now going to dig into one of these specific solutions, which is actually unique to Comtech, and that is the machine translation automated post editing, or what we call MTAP for short. So what does MTAP stand for? I've just mentioned there, it's machine translation with automated post editing. So it's a fully AI driven solution, at least on the sort of the face of it. What it does do is it combines machine translation with very specific rules that are processed by large language models, LLMs, to deliver an instant but customized output. This is very different from raw machine translation, which is available through automated translation plugins and that kind of thing. Raw machine translation is very generic. It doesn't apply things like glossary. It doesn't respect things like tone of voice. There's very little scope there to kind of customize to your market or your brand. Whereas our MTAP solution, and it can be delivered through Pronto, which is our self-service platform, or delivered as a managed service. This does incorporate things like client-approved terminology, tone of voice rules, market specific preferences, and that kind of thing. And I think that's particularly powerful when you're delivering large volumes of content across different or multiple languages, because it gives you that speed and scalability without removing that element of control. And I think that's really an important or critical distinction when you're exploring AI in localization. So how can you kind of help your clients assess what's the right level for them? I think one of the most powerful things that we can do when talking to clients is ask some really key defining questions. Instead of asking things like, do you want us to use AI for this? We can also ask things like, what languages do you need? Who's the audience? Is this internal or external facing content? How visible is this content? Also, what is their biggest priority? Is it things like speed, budget, and quality? And to have no judgment attached to any of these answers. I think it's also really important to note that the questions on the screen now are just examples. There's a lot of nuance involved, I think, in building a localization strategy, putting together a localization solution. But hopefully these questions here will just give you an idea of what can help reposition you as that strategic advisor when it comes to translation. When we join agency discovery calls, this is kind of how we will try and guide the conversation. Not necessarily by pushing a higher cost solution if that's not the right fit for the client, but actually exploring things like risk and objectives. And that moves the conversation away from just price alone. So if there are a few things that you're going to take away from today's session, I hope that it is this. Firstly, that AI has changed how, but not whether localization is needed. It's changed how localization is done, but not whether it should take place in the first place. Secondly, the AI works best inside a structured workflow with the right level of human oversight in place. And that right level, as I mentioned earlier, can look very different for each team and each client. different content deserves different treatment, and agencies that lead these conversations, learning partners who lead these conversations, can increase deal value and strengthen retention as a result. So localization really can become part of your growth strategy. And I think that's where Comtech can really support behind the scenes. We will regularly support pitches, provide quotes for different options. We will review content and recommend different service levels. We'll join discovery calls as technical experts, but we can also sit behind the scenes if that's a preference for you as well. We can deliver workshops for your sales teams to help them feel really confident exploring localization and explaining it to different clients. And we can also offer access to Pronto, which, as I mentioned already, is our self-service machine translation solution. We very much see ourselves as an extension of your team. Our goal is to help you win and retain business, but not to complicate it. So I hope that has been a really helpful introductory session. There's a few things that I can pass on to you today as a thank you for attending. First of all, if you email me the word freebie, my email address is on screen for you now. I can give you a PDF, which is a guide on how you can use AI in your L&D localization strategy. And secondly, we can put together a free MTAP, machine translation automated post-editing sample of your content in any language, just to show you the real difference between a customized solution versus a raw generic machine translation or AI translation solution. Of course, if you've got any questions after today's session, my email address is on the screen for you there. I hope that you've enjoyed today, and thank you very much. I hope to hear from you soon.